gambling 365 days a year, with a live horse racing 52 days this year, plus 16 just added. But everyday gambling, not just watching live horses, it's about gambling. So let's talk about gambling facts. It's a public health epidemic as deemed by the UK and many other countries. The US has by far the most casinos and gambling sites in the world. 75% of gamblers have a drinking disorder. Per man, since 2019, drunk driving deaths have increased by 31%. 38% of gamblers have a drug disorder. 61% have a clinically diagnosed personality disorder. Poor households have a 100% higher rate of gambling. Gamblers are 15 times more prone to suicide, the highest rate of any addictive behavior. It is hard to eradicate a gambling addiction because gamblers don't feel sick, only unlucky. 50% of those affected by gambling problems commit crimes in order to support their habits. Gamblers show much higher levels of anger. Pari-mutuel and internet gambling are the most addictive forms of gambling. Northfield Downs uses pari-mutuel gambling. So let's talk about youth gambling. Well, Northfield Downs and the state allows 18-year-olds to gamble. All ages are welcome. Aaliyah Lucas, gambling specialist with Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, said her department is now focusing on preventive efforts toward middle school. 18 to 24-year-olds are the most likely to engage in risky gambling. That is why gambling facilities like Northfield Downs allows 18-year-olds to gamble and even younger to view. Youth who start young are more likely to grow into problem gamblers. With the anxiety levels of youth today, we should be removing youth gambling. 18 to 24-year-olds are the fastest growing group of gambling addicts. So as a community, shouldn't we be trying to protect and help our most vulnerable? So your decision regarding allowing this gambling facility will be based either on small revenue generated or the health, safety, and welfare of our residents. Mr. Heisey is trying to strike a deal with Northfield Downs and a compromise with our residents through a community benefit plan. But no community benefit plan can ever make up for the havoc created by gambling issues. Bad is still bad. The dollars we receive from Northfield Downs will be used up in some insignificant way. But we will have to deal with this gambling facilities issues in a significant way. As a board, please show wisdom and reject this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
And as I sit through these meetings, one thing continually stands out. Your residents and some trustees are truly educated on this horse racing proposition and really make excellent points. As I drove home from the last board meeting, I thought about what Trustee Stewart said, and what you just said, that you can hardly call this business acquisition a racetrack, since racing will be held only 2 days a week, while simulcast gambling will occur 7 days a week from 11 to 11. Your residents are correct when they call this simply a major gambling venture with some horse racing thrown in now and then. Trustee Stewart also questioned what community amenities may be received from this deal. Horse tracks don't bring in much money lately and are hugely subsidized, with much of this subsidized money going into a strictly regulated fund to be used only within the horse racing industry. A township resident then gave us good reasons to believe that creating soccer fields in the middle of a horse track at a gambling facility may not be such a great idea. Kids would most likely show up for practice or games while all the gambling's going on. curious. They're going to want to know why all these adults are drinking and watching live-streamed horse races in the middle of the day. Is this not a rather sordid and sleazy scenario for kids? Surely not when one imagines when thinking of kids enjoying a great day of soccer in the fresh air. And what about the environmental quality of these fields? UStrotting.com, which is the website for the harness racing industry, states that a racetrack should be constructed so that 3/4 of track drainage is to the inside of the track, with only 1/4 to the outside. Soccer moms won't be very happy about kids possibly playing in horse urine and E. coli. I did a Google search on new horse tracks being built in the U.S. No matter how I worded the search, I came up with Plymouth Township and Ashland, Kentucky. The one in Kentucky will probably be successful because of a casino subsidizing it with historical horse racing machines. How will your track survive? Thank you very much.
Anybody else at this time?
Am I speaking okay?
Yep.
Very kind. In my 45 years as a resident, I've not seen anything like this come full circle. Kurt, you began as supervisor complaining of chicanery, and here we are today. In the last board meeting, the mask came off. After mocking residents' concerns on social media, and after a heart-wrenching account of 3 deaths due to drunk driving, Jerry, you disrespectfully and shamelessly passed around a photo of the deceased. Many were puzzled by your motive as it gave concrete proof that drunk driving concerns are real. It also gave insight into your callousness. Apparently, you did not learn from the blowback with the Kobe Bryant tragedy and photos. How are residents voters supposed to feel about your judgment as clerk and on the racetrack? Kurt, more township bulletins have come out. Again, no mention of Northville Downs. You then claim transparency because you release agendas. In a January 23 TV News PR piece, newscaster Kimberly Gill called horse racing a dying industry. Marilyn Beretta, Salem Township horse owner, states there is not enough purse money for more races, making Northville Downs primarily a gambling facility. You disregard the fact that only multiple sample testing can prove the proposed site is either contaminated or not. No vote or a mailed survey to each resident of $15,000 expense were conducted versus a monetary risk to the residents for what history has proven will be a failed project. You refuse to answer questions. Dr. Hammer's question on contingency purchase met only silence. No good for Plymouth Township residents has been provided. Your lack of patience for a hidden agenda is revealed by your PUD. Master plans and zoning exist. Use them. Now, Norwegian Nell Hydrogen has announced a $400 million potential Plymouth Township site interest, proof of your poor judgment. Mike Carlo told me that Northville Township would not sell them land. Why do you want Northville Downs if they had it and no longer view it as beneficial? You keep claiming political motivations for the opposition. When a speaker last meeting who effectively stated there is no future or demand for this gambling facility and stated his political pedigree in Macomb politics, you shone a light on your political motivation by calling out and asking him for a coffee meeting in a video public meeting. All of this places the rest of you in a dilemma. Clearly, residents do not want this gambling racing facility. So heed the fable of the fox and the scorpion, where a scorpion asked the fox to carry it across the river. The fox said no because the scorpion would sting and kill him. The scorpion said if I did, they would both drown. Based on this, the fox agreed. Halfway across the river, the scorpion stung the fox. As they were drowning, the fox asked why. The scorpion replied, because it's my nature. Kurt and Jerry have revealed their true natures. You hold your future and that of the township in the balance. Please do not destroy our family, tranquil, desirable community. Do not be the fox.
Hello, I'm Bill Pine, 45-year township resident. I've continued to think about your gaming and racing facility and have some additional thoughts. Kurt and Jerry, I've been listening to you for some time now, talking about your First Amendment rights while serving as public officials, due process, attorney-client privilege, rights of business owners, nefarious political initiatives, and your right to see the names of people who are opposed to the gaming facility. What I haven't heard you say is a word about your obligation to the residents of the township. I've been coming to these meetings since February. The very first time I came here, Kurt, I watched you walk through that door and tell the Planning Commission to approve the planned unit development for the gaming facility. In the 7 months since then, there has been a long parade of residents who have asked you dozens and dozens and dozens of questions and made many, many constructive suggestions about the gaming initiative in an effort to more completely assess the pros and cons of this initiative. I haven't been to all the meetings about this issue, but in the many meetings I have attended, you haven't answered a single question or considered a single suggestion. Instead, Kurt, you've initiated an extensive disinformation initiative, throwing dust in the air to try to distract folks from the issue at hand through print, electronic, and social media, claiming that residents' concerns were actually an effort by mysterious political enemies who wanted to pick on you. The folks who are pushing and supporting gaming, Myers, and the car wash are essentially all from outside of Plymouth Township. You don't work for outside special interests. You don't work for the gaming industry. You don't work for the multinational corporations. You don't work for private equity groups. You don't work for the politicians and bureaucrats in Lansing. You do work for the residents of Plymouth Township. You need to answer the residents' questions. You need to acknowledge your obligation to those residents. You need to assure that the pros and cons of all these initiatives are addressed. The gaming facility in Racetrac is a blatantly losing proposition based on my analysis. Plymouth Township is watching.
I want to thank the four of you that are paying attention. There's a couple that are totally disrespectful, staring down the papers, not listening to them at all. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Very good. And, sorry.
My name is Diane Lewis, and I think you're probably all tired about hearing about the opposition to the racetrack, but I think probably everybody on this board has children and maybe even grandchildren. And I hope you've been doing some research on the pitfalls of gambling. I've read that depression and anxiety are part of the main reason people turn to gambling. And we all know that there's a big problem with depression and anxiety nowadays. We don't need our children exposed to gambling this close to home. We need to maintain our community values and family values. And it does not include a racetrack. Actually, it's a gambling facility because you can't even call it a racetrack because it's only 50 days of horse racing a year, approximately. The rest of the 300 some days is strictly gambling. And there's no benefit to that. But on another note, back in February, Kurt went before the Planning Commission, and he basically encouraged me to present this to the Board of Trustees. And he said this was only the second time in 7 years that he went before the commission. What I'd like to know, isn't this a conflict of interest since Carmel Brothers donated to your campaign, and usually campaign donations require something in return. And the old saying goes, just follow the money. There has been a total lack of full disclosure, and this should be investigated. When the vote comes in from our board for this racetrack, it would be interesting because The ones with the no votes are the ones that are interested in preserving our community. And the ones with the yes votes are the ones interested in their own political gain. Now, I have one other thing I want us to talk about, and that was Jerry Grover's comment at the last meeting about 9 days of early voting. Chuck Kearney questioned you regarding using the Friendship Station, and I actually didn't know at the time, but you said there wasn't adequate parking there. But in fact, I discovered that's precinct number 2. So there's adequate parking for 1 day of voting when people come in larger numbers, but there's not enough parking for 9 days of voting where people are spread out. This whole vote thing was done with lack of transparency. And another thing I discovered is the reason the $50,000 figure was presented was because that did not require a bid. Any purchase under $50,000 does not require a bid. And I saw you waving the phone.
Yeah.
But since this board is so non-transparent, I think you should up our time to at least 4 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mary Ann Adams, 25-year resident of Plymouth Township. I've also come and spoken about my opposition to this racetrack. This is personal for me. I have family members who have addiction issues, and one who has specifically suffered from gambling addiction and is paying tremendously for this. The individuals that have addiction problems are veterans. They have seen many bad things in their time in the service, and it's very hard to come back to this country and try to assimilate and be normal after the things that they've seen. So I'm going to continue to fight this as much as I can, just so you know. But I also want you to know that personally, I can't even get out of my subdivision in a normal way now because Ridge Road is a mess. This morning when I had to go to work, there was truck after truck after truck, and I can't even get out on Powell and make a left or a right-hand turn during rush hour, so I go west on Powell, I go south on Ridge, try to get to 5 Mile, and that traffic is just backed up with all the trucks now that are trying to get to where they need to go. So I think you need to redo the traffic study because that's one of the requirements for the PUD, and you really need to understand what is going on with the traffic there, especially with that monstrosity that's been built on Ridge Road now, that 2-level warehouse that is going to cause a lot more traffic to come there. Thank you.